The rise of humanity's might, hook and suspense. Emerges empire. The stars glittered against the backdrop of the vast galaxy, but in this part of the universe, the light was dimming. The galaxy was on the edge of chaos. Alien factions, once separated by light years, had begun to unite. Their ships roamed the galaxy, terrorizing weaker species, taking what they wanted without remorse. The universe had forgotten what true resistance looked like, and it seemed that nothing could stop the inevitable wave of destruction. But the galaxy had underestimated one thing: humanity. Deep within the outer rim, an enormous ship broke through the darkness, cutting across the void like a blade through silk. The massive warship, known as the human Supercarrier, was humanity's last hope. It was not just a ship. It was a symbol of everything that made humans different: their determination, their resilience, their unyielding spirit. The ship was massive, a creation of years of research, engineering, and battle experience. Its sheer size could make even the bravest of aliens hesitate. The Supercarrier was humanity's most advanced weapon, designed to fight battles no one believed could be won. The space around it was filled with technology that most aliens couldn't even begin to understand. Its hull was reinforced with materials that could withstand even the most devastating alien weaponry. The engines hummed with power, and the ship's advanced systems pulsed with readiness. It was alive with purpose. The crew, a mix of soldiers, scientists, engineers, and tactical geniuses, stood ready. They had trained for this moment, prepared for a fight that might determine the fate of their species. Among them was Captain Alexis Grant, a leader with a calm demeanor but a fire in her eyes. Her years of experience told her that the upcoming battle would be unlike anything they had ever faced. "We have a chance," Captain Grant said to her crew, her voice steady. "But we must be ready for anything." The captain's words rang in their ears, reminding the crew that their mission was more than just survival. They had to prove to the galaxy that humans would not be wiped out. They would stand strong, even if the odds were against them. But as the Supercarrier glided silently through the galaxy, a message came in, an encrypted distress signal from a far-off colony. The message was barely audible, but it was enough to send a chill down the captain's spine. The colony was under attack, and it wasn't just any attack. It was the work of the Galactic Empire, a vast coalition of alien species that had crushed countless civilizations. Their ships were huge, their technology far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Captain Grant's eyes narrowed. "This is it," she whispered to herself. "They're coming." The signal from the colony had been cut off, but it didn't take a genius to know what that meant. The Empire had already begun their invasion. They would stop at nothing to conquer the galaxy, and humanity was in their sights. The Supercarrier, a marvel of human engineering, was the only thing standing between the Empire and the destruction of everything the humans had built. As the crew prepared for battle, the Supercarrier began its rapid acceleration toward the colony's location. But time was not on their side. The Empire's fleet, a formidable force of thousands of ships, was on the move. They had the advantage of numbers, but humanity had something far more powerful: the will to survive. The crew gathered around their battle stations. On the bridge, the tension was palpable. Every second counted. The enemy fleet was closing in, but the Supercarrier had one thing they didn't: surprise. "All systems are online," the chief engineer reported. "Weapons primed. We're ready." The ship's massive guns roared to life, charging with energy. The engines fired up with a thunderous roar, sending the Supercarrier hurtling toward its target. The crew braced for impact. They knew that this was just the beginning, and what lay ahead would test their very souls. In the distance, the Empire's fleet emerged from the shadows of a nearby asteroid field. 1,000 ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever faced, loomed in the dark expanse. The Supercarrier was outnumbered. There was no chance of victory if they fought the Empire head-on. "Prepare the pulse cannon," Captain Grant ordered, her voice calm despite the mounting pressure. "We're going to make them regret underestimating us." The tension on the bridge was thick, each crew member focused on their tasks, knowing that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. The supercarrier's sensors locked onto the alien fleet, calculating the best possible attack strategy. The ship's immense power surged, and the air crackled with energy. The time had come. Suddenly, an alarm sounded, and the entire ship shook. The Empire had fired their first shot. But the crew wasn't worried. They were ready. The human supercarrier would show the galaxy what true power looked like. It would prove that humanity, though small in number, had the strength to fight back. As the crew prepared for the battle of their lives, Captain Grant stared out at the approaching enemy. Her voice rang out, unwavering. "Let's show them what humanity can do." And with that, the supercarrier dove into the heart of the battle, ready to prove that the galaxy had made a grave mistake in thinking humans could be defeated. The supercarrier's awakening. The battlefield stretched out in front of the human supercarrier like an endless sea of stars, each one a witness to what was about to unfold. The Empire's fleet moved with terrifying precision, their ships a network of cold, calculated destruction. The supercarrier, on the other hand, stood firm, a beacon of human ingenuity and unyielding will. Captain Grant gripped the armrest of her command chair as she watched the fleet's movements through the main view screen. "We're outnumbered," she said, her voice steady, but her mind racing. "But that won't stop us." The supercarrier was not just a warship. It was a marvel of human engineering, crafted to endure and fight back in ways the Empire could never have anticipated. Its hull, reinforced with the latest alloys, glinted under the stars. The crew worked tirelessly, each person aware of their role in the high-stakes game they were playing. Every command was crucial, every second mattered. "Target lock on the lead ship, Captain," the weapons officer reported, his hands flying over the controls. "We can take them out with a single shot." Captain Grant nodded. "Fire when ready." A pulse of energy erupted from the supercarrier's weapons array. The massive blast shot across the distance, hitting one of the Empire's lead ships dead center. The enemy ship was torn apart in an instant, its massive hull crumbling like paper before the sheer force of humanity's might. The supercarrier's crew erupted in cheers, but Captain Grant's face remained grim. "That's just the beginning," she muttered to herself. "They'll come back harder." And she was right. The Empire's ships did not flinch at the loss of one vessel. Instead, they regrouped, adjusting their formation, and opened fire. The massive beams of energy that shot from the enemy fleet were enough to shake the supercarrier to its core. The crew was thrown from their stations, some hitting the floor hard, but they quickly scrambled back to their posts, refusing to give in. "Damage report," Captain Grant barked. "We've taken some hits, Captain, but nothing critical," the chief engineer reported. "The shields are holding. We can keep fighting." Captain Grant's eyes narrowed. "Increase speed. Let's show them what we're made of." With the crew's swift actions, the supercarrier surged forward. The ship's immense engines roared to life as they pushed past the enemy fire, weaving through the chaos of the battle. The pulse cannon recharged, its power building once again as the crew prepared for the next devastating strike. But the Empire wasn't so easily fooled. The lead commander of the alien fleet, a ruthless and battle-hardened leader, had already begun to analyze the human supercarrier. He understood one thing clearly. If the Empire's fleet was to survive this battle, they would need to take down the supercarrier quickly. It was humanity's greatest weapon, and if they didn't eliminate it, they risked losing the entire galaxy. "Activate the gravity wells," the commander ordered, his voice cold and calculating. "Bring them to us." In the depths of the enemy ships, massive devices powered up. Gravity wells, devices designed to pull ships into their range, engaged, creating an invisible force field that began to drag the human supercarrier toward the heart of the enemy fleet. "Captain, they've activated gravity wells." The helmsman shouted. "We're being pulled in." The crew braced as the ship's course shifted, the immense force threatening to pull them out of control. But Captain Grant was not one to surrender easily. "Full power to the engines," she ordered. "We're not going down without a fight." With a roar, the supercarrier's engines surged forward, straining against the gravitational pull. The ship trembled under the immense strain, but the crew held steady. With one last surge, they broke free from the gravity wells, sending a shockwave through the surrounding space. The Empire's fleet had underestimated the supercarrier. They thought they could control the human ship, but they hadn't accounted for the ship's adaptability and its crew's determination. In that single moment, humanity's resilience was proven once again. The battle raged on. The supercarrier fought tooth and nail, its weapons blasting away at the alien ships while the crew continued to work together as a well-oiled machine. Every strike, every maneuver was calculated, each decision making the difference between life and death. The Empire's fleet was not easy to defeat, but with every explosion, with every alien ship destroyed, the crew of the supercarrier knew they were slowly but surely turning the tide. But the war was far from over. "Captain," the tactical officer reported, "they're bringing in reinforcements. A new fleet just entered our sector." Captain Grant's heart sank. The enemy wasn't done. They were preparing for something much bigger. The supercarrier, though powerful, was being stretched to its limits. "We need to make this count," Captain Grant muttered, her eyes scanning the space before them. "Prepare for the final strike. We take them down now, or we don't get another chance." The crew, battered but not broken, set to work. The supercarrier's weapons recharged, the massive guns lining the ship ready to unleash humanity's final stand. This wasn't just about a battle for survival. It was a fight for the future of the galaxy, a fight humanity could not afford to lose. The time had come. Humanity's might would be tested like never before. A battle like no other. The space around the human supercarrier was now a chaotic blur of flashing lights, exploding ships, and scattered debris. Captain Grant's eyes locked onto the view screen, tracking the movements of the enemy fleet. The Empire's ships were relentless, firing wave after wave of energy blasts, each one powerful enough to shatter the strongest defenses. The supercarrier had taken a few hits, but its hull was holding steady, so far. "Shields at 40%. The engineer called out. "We're starting to take heavy damage." Captain Grant's face remained stoic as the sound of explosions shook the ship. "Give them everything we've got. We're not backing down." The weapons officer grinned, his fingers flying over the controls. Firing pulse cannon. A massive, concentrated beam of energy shot out from the supercarrier's core, cutting through the vastness of space. The first enemy ship it hit exploded in a blinding flash. But there were more. So many more. The Empire's fleet had already begun to regroup, now fully aware of the threat the human supercarrier posed. They had suffered losses, but it wasn't enough to make them retreat. Instead, they coordinated their attacks, sending smaller ships in to flank the supercarrier, hoping to catch it off guard. "Captain, they're surrounding us," shouted the helmsman. Captain Grant's eyes narrowed. The supercarrier was powerful, but if the Empire encircled them completely, they would be sitting ducks. "We need to break free. Focus fire on the ships coming in from the left flank." The ship's powerful guns roared to life, targeting the smaller enemy vessels that were attempting to close in. Each blast sent shockwaves through space, causing enemy ships to explode into a cascade of burning debris. Yet, despite the destruction, the Empire pressed forward, determined to crush humanity's last hope. "Incoming enemy missiles, Captain," the sensors officer warned. "They're locking onto us." Captain Grant gritted her teeth. There was no way to avoid them all, but there was one thing the Empire hadn't counted on: the human ability to improvise. "Activate countermeasures. Prepare for evasive maneuvers," she commanded. The supercarrier's defense systems hummed into action. Flashes of light erupted as decoy drones shot out from hidden compartments, creating false targets that confused the enemy's missiles. The ship veered sharply to the side, narrowly avoiding a deadly barrage. The Empire's missiles collided with each other, their explosions lighting up the darkness of space. "We're not out of the woods yet," Captain Grant muttered, her grip tightening on the armrest. "Keep them coming." The enemy ships didn't relent. They were beginning to launch more coordinated attacks, using their superior numbers to their advantage. Captain Grant knew the only way to survive this was to turn the tables, by making the Empire fear the human supercarrier. The order was given to deploy the supercarrier's most devastating weapon, the vortex cannons. These massive energy cannons created intense gravitational anomalies, pulling anything in their path into a deadly, twisting vortex. When aimed correctly, the vortex cannons would decimate entire fleets. Targeting their central fleet, the weapons officer said, his voice shaking with excitement. "Locking on now." Captain Grant nodded. "Do it. Make it count." The vortex cannons powered up, their hum filling the air as the immense force of the ship's gravity wells built. Then, with a sound like a thunderclap, the cannons fired. The gravitational fields erupted outward, pulling in enemy ships with violent force. Those ships that were caught in the vortex had no chance. They were ripped apart as they were dragged toward the epicenter of the cannon's power. But the Empire wasn't done yet. "Captain, their reinforcements are here." The tactical officer shouted, his voice laced with urgency. A new wave of enemy ships emerged from the shadows, each one larger and more advanced than the last. The tide of battle was shifting again. The supercarrier had caused massive damage, but the Empire wasn't ready to surrender. The galactic power behind them was too great. "We need to fall back and regroup," the chief strategist suggested, seeing the new enemy fleet assembling. "We can't hold our position forever." Captain Grant shook her head. "No, we're not retreating. We're going to finish this." Her decision was clear. They had to push through, or they would be crushed under the weight of the Empire's forces. The supercarrier surged forward again, its massive engines propelling it through the battlefield. Every inch of the ship's arsenal was fired in rapid succession. Lasers, missiles, torpedoes, all aimed at the incoming threat. The ship's hull shuddered under the strain, but it held firm. The crew was relentless. They had survived so much, and the thought of giving up was simply not an option. They fought back with everything they had, pouring all their strength into their weapons and defenses. Then, through the chaos, something remarkable happened. A powerful explosion rocked the battlefield, one that didn't come from the supercarrier. The Empire's flagship, the heart of their fleet, had been hit. A single well-placed shot from the supercarrier's pulse cannon had breached its shields, sending shockwaves through its hull. The massive ship began to break apart, its engines going critical. Direct hit on their flagship. The weapons officer shouted in triumph. "They're retreating." The Empire's forces faltered, their cohesion breaking apart. With their flagship lost, the rest of their fleet began to retreat, slowly at first, then in full panic as the supercarrier advanced. Captain Grant stood tall, watching as the once formidable Empire fleet began to scatter into the darkness. Humanity had not just survived. They had fought back. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with awe. But her relief was short-lived. The supercarrier had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The Empire was vast, and this victory would only fuel their desire for revenge. "We'll need to be ready for whatever comes next," Captain Grant said. "But tonight, we've proven something to the galaxy. Humanity isn't going down without a fight." As the supercarrier drifted in the wake of the enemy's retreat, the crew celebrated, but they knew the hardest part was still to come. The battle had been won, but the war for the future of the galaxy was just beginning. The turning tide. As the remnants of the Empire's fleet scattered into the void, the supercarrier's crew allowed themselves a brief moment of relief. The battle had been intense, and humanity had struck a powerful blow against their enemies. But that victory felt fragile, like a candle flame flickering in the wind. Captain Grant stood at the helm, watching the damaged Empire ships retreat into the distance, but her mind was already focused on the bigger picture. "Don't let your guard down," Captain Grant said, her voice firm. "They'll be back, and they'll come with everything they have." The tactical officer nodded grimly. "We've made a dent, Captain, but they're still out there. We've only seen a fraction of the Empire's full force." Grant turned, staring at the vast emptiness before her. Despite their victory, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely the calm before the storm. The Empire wasn't a force that would retreat easily. The loss of their flagship would only fuel their rage, and it was only a matter of time before they returned with reinforcements. A transmission came through, breaking the silence on the bridge. It was from Fleet Command. "Captain Grant, we've been monitoring the situation. The Empire has called for reinforcements," said the voice from Fleet Command. "A new fleet has been dispatched from their central base. This will be the real test." The captain's heart sank. She had hoped for more time. But now they were facing the possibility of a new, even more powerful threat. Humanity's victory had been significant, but it might not be enough. "We need to prepare," Captain Grant said. "Get every crew member to their stations. We're going to need everything we've got to hold off this new fleet." The Supercarrier's engines hummed with renewed power as the crew sprang into action. The ship was already battered from the previous battle, but it was still humanity's most formidable weapon. The Supercarrier's weapon systems were recharged, its engines ready to carry it through the next fight. Every member of the crew knew that this wasn't just about defending themselves. It was about sending a message to the galaxy that humanity was not just a target, but a force to be reckoned with. But as they made their preparations, something unexpected happened. "Captain, we've detected an anomaly in the nearby system," the sensor officer said, his voice tinged with confusion. "It's not an enemy fleet, but something much bigger." Captain Grant's eyebrows furrowed. "What do you mean, something bigger?" The officer's fingers danced across the controls. "It's an energy signature like nothing we've ever seen before. It's huge, and it's coming straight for us." The crew turned to the screen, their faces filled with a mix of curiosity and dread. The anomaly was unlike anything they had encountered. It wasn't a fleet. It was a massive presence, a wave of energy that seemed to distort space itself. It wasn't the Empire, but something far more dangerous. Humanity was about to face a new enemy, one that might not even care about the Empire's war. "Raise shields. Prepare for anything," Captain Grant ordered. As the ship braced for the unknown, the energy wave grew stronger, filling the entire view screen. The tension on the bridge was palpable. The unknown presence was close now, within range, and the crew had no idea what to expect. Then, as if to answer their question, a fleet of unknown ships emerged from the energy distortion. They weren't like anything humanity had seen before. Their design was sleek, almost organic in appearance, with glowing structures that seemed to pulse with energy. The ships were enormous, dwarfing the Supercarrier in both size and power. They weren't human, they weren't alien. They were something else entirely. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," the communications officer said, his voice trembling. "It's not in any language we've encountered before, but we can still translate the basic message." Grant's grip tightened on the armrest of her chair. "What does it say?" The officer swallowed hard before reading the message aloud. "We are the Thanik. You have awakened us. Prepare for judgment." Captain Grant's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just an enemy fleet. This was something ancient, something far beyond anything humanity had encountered. The Thanik had been waiting for the perfect moment to make their presence known. Humanity had unknowingly triggered their arrival, and now there was no turning back. "We're not ready for this," the chief strategist muttered. "These ships are beyond anything we've ever faced. They can destroy us with a thought." Captain Grant wasn't one to give in to fear. She turned to her crew with determination in her eyes. "This is not how it ends. Humanity has always been the underdog, but we've proven time and again that we will not be defeated. We are going to fight." The crew stood tall, rallying behind their captain, though they knew this new threat might be far too powerful to overcome. But one thing was certain: humanity would never go down without a fight. No matter the size of the enemy or the odds stacked against them, the supercarrier would be their last stand, and they would not falter. "We'll need everything," Captain Grant said. "Prepare all weapons. Prepare all systems. This is the battle for the future of the galaxy, and humanity is not going down quietly." The crew rallied together, preparing for the unknown. The Danik might have arrived, but humanity had proven that it could face anything head-on. It wouldn't be easy, but Captain Grant knew one thing for sure: the fight for the galaxy was far from over. And the supercarrier was going to lead the charge. The final push. The Danik fleet loomed in front of the supercarrier, their immense, pulsating ships radiating energy that seemed to warp space itself. The feeling of dread among the crew was palpable. This wasn't a typical battle, and the stakes were higher than ever. Captain Grant stood at the bridge, her mind racing as she evaluated the situation. She had seen impossible odds before, but this was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. The unknown enemy ships were huge, sleek, and ominous, each one carrying an energy signature so powerful that it seemed to distort the fabric of reality. They had no visible weapons, yet every ship was a weapon in itself, radiating with destructive potential. The Danik had made it clear with their message: "Prepare for judgment." It was a chilling proclamation, one that suggested humanity was facing something far beyond simple conquest. "Captain, their ships are not firing," the sensor officer reported, his voice uncertain. "But they're coming closer." Grant's eyes narrowed. There was something almost eerie about the stillness of the situation. The Danik ships weren't launching attacks. They were simply getting closer, as if drawing the supercarrier into a trap. "Don't engage unless they do," Captain Grant said, her voice firm. "I want all tactical systems at the ready. We're not going to be caught off guard." The supercarrier drifted silently, its massive engines humming softly as it prepared for what was to come. It was a waiting game now, and humanity couldn't afford any mistakes. Every crew member knew that this would be the moment where their fate would be sealed, one way or another. But just as the Danik ships closed in, a massive energy pulse erupted from their fleet. The wave of energy washed over the supercarrier like a shockwave, hitting the shields with devastating force. The entire ship shuddered as the pulse slammed into them, knocking crew members off balance. "Shields at 25%. The chief engineer shouted, his voice strained. "We can't take much more of this." The first attack had come, and it was far stronger than anything the crew had anticipated. The supercarrier's once impenetrable shields were already on the brink of failure. The crew scrambled to respond, but it was clear that the Danik weren't holding back. "Return fire," Captain Grant ordered, her voice sharp with urgency. The weapons officer wasted no time. The supercarrier's massive cannons fired in rapid succession, launching wave after wave of energy blasts toward the Danik ships. But the enemy ships didn't flinch. They absorbed the blasts as if they were nothing, their shields shimmering briefly before restoring themselves completely. "We're not even scratching them," the weapons officer said in disbelief. "Their shields are too strong." Captain Grant's jaw tightened. They had known this would be a difficult fight. But the sheer power of the Danik was overwhelming. She needed something more, something to turn the tide in their favor. "Status on the pulse cannon?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "Charging, Captain, but it's going to take time," the weapons officer replied. "It's our only shot." Time was something the crew didn't have. The Danik ships were closing in, and their energy pulses were growing stronger, battering the supercarrier's defenses with terrifying intensity. "We need to buy time," Captain Grant said. "Prepare the vortex cannons. Target their fleet's center." The crew sprang into action, each member fully aware of what was at stake. The vortex cannons were humanity's last hope, powerful enough to create gravitational anomalies capable of tearing apart enemy fleets. But they had to get it right. Vortex cannons charged and ready, the weapons officer called out. "Fire," Captain Grant commanded. The cannons fired, sending ripples of gravitational force tearing through space. The energy waves hit the Danik fleet, creating swirling vortexes that pulled ships into their destructive centers. For a moment, it seemed like the Supercarrier had gained the upper hand. Ships were ripped apart, their hulls twisted and crushed by the immense forces of the vortex. The Danik fleet began to fragment, some ships breaking off to escape the anomaly. But then, something shocking happened. The Danik fleet seemed to pulse, and with it, the gravitational anomalies disappeared. The ships reappeared, unharmed, as if they had simply brushed off the attack. It was as though they had adapted to the Supercarrier's weapons in real time, shrugging off the devastation with unnatural ease. They've countered our attack, the sensor officer said in awe. Captain Grant's heart sank. This wasn't just a battle. It was a test of humanity's limits. The Supercarrier had been humanity's most powerful weapon, but the Danik had turned that power against them. They were too strong, too advanced. But there was one thing they hadn't counted on. "Prepare the pulse cannon," Grant said, her voice filled with determination. "This is our final shot." The energy buildup for the pulse cannon began, its vast power drawing the crew's attention. The Supercarrier's weapons hummed with a growing intensity, the energy slowly building up to unimaginable levels. If the Supercarrier couldn't break the Danik's shields now, they would lose everything. "Pulse cannon ready," the weapons officer announced. "Fire." The beam of concentrated energy shot from the Supercarrier, its intensity unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The wave of power streaked toward the Danik fleet, and this time, the enemy fleet couldn't block it. The pulse cannon blasted through their shields, hitting one of their ships dead center. For the first time, the Danik ships flinched as the massive ship crumpled, its structure tearing apart in an explosion of energy. The Danik fleet hesitated. Then, as if in response to the defeat of their ship, the remaining Danik ships began to retreat. Slowly, then in full force, they pulled back, leaving behind the remnants of their shattered fleet. "We did it," the chief engineer said, his voice filled with disbelief. Captain Grant's eyes never left the view screen. The Supercarrier had survived, but at a great cost. They had won this battle, but the Danik had only shown a fraction of their true power. "Not yet," Captain Grant replied, her voice steady. "This isn't the end. We've just made them angry. We'll have to be ready for what comes next." As the Supercarrier floated in the aftermath of the battle, the crew's exhaustion was palpable. But amidst the victory, there was also a feeling of dread. The Danik had been a challenge, but humanity had proven something today. They could endure, and they could fight back against even the most overwhelming odds. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's might. And it was only the beginning. Victory at last. The space around the human Supercarrier was eerily quiet, the only sound the hum of its remaining engines as they drifted through the aftermath of the battle. The Danik fleet had retreated, their once imposing ships now mere specks of light disappearing into the distance. The battle was over, but it felt like a fleeting victory. The damage to the Supercarrier was significant, and the crew had been pushed to their absolute limits. "Captain, shields at 15%, the chief engineer reported, his voice strained. "We've taken considerable damage, but we're holding on. The hull integrity is still intact." Captain Grant stood at the helm, her face lined with exhaustion, but her resolve unbroken. The Supercarrier had survived, but at what cost? The Danik's overwhelming power had almost been too much. The crew had fought hard, but even now, there was a part of her that knew this was only the beginning of a much larger struggle. "We've won this round," Captain Grant said, her voice steady but reflective. "But the Danik will be back. They've seen our strength, and now they'll want to crush us for good. We need to prepare for whatever comes next." The tactical officer nodded. "We'll need reinforcements. We've pushed our weapons and shields to their limits. Another battle like this, and we won't be able to survive it." Captain Grant turned to face her crew, seeing the exhaustion and determination in their eyes. They had given everything, but they had also proven something remarkable. Humanity was not just a footnote in the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with, and in that moment, she knew they could face whatever the galaxy threw at them. "We don't need to survive. We need to fight," she said, her voice carrying through the bridge. "We've shown the galaxy what humanity can do. We've shown them that we will stand, no matter the odds. That is the power of the human supercarrier." There was a moment of silence, and then the crew stood taller. They had seen what humanity could accomplish when it fought with everything it had, and it was a moment they would carry with them forever. "We'll keep fighting, Captain," the chief strategist said. "We'll keep pushing forward, and we'll make sure the galaxy knows we're not backing down." The crew set to work, focusing on repairs, restoring what had been damaged, and preparing for the inevitable return of the Danik. The battle had left them battered, but the supercarrier was still operational, and that meant they had a fighting chance. As the supercarrier drifted through the empty space, Captain Grant took a long, steadying breath. She glanced out at the stars before her. The galaxy was vast, and the future uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity's resolve had been tested, and it had withstood the trial. They had survived the unimaginable, and as long as the supercarrier was in the fight, they would continue to stand. The crew worked through the night, their exhaustion pushing them to keep going, to rebuild and refuel the supercarrier. It was a labor of necessity and defiance. They had made it through the battle, but everyone knew the real test was yet to come. Over the next few days, the supercarrier drifted toward the nearest human-controlled space station, a safe haven where they could rest, resupply, and regroup. The journey was slow, the ship limping along as the crew worked tirelessly to stabilize the systems. "We've made it this far," Captain Grant said as she walked through the corridors of the ship, her mind filled with the weight of their journey. "We'll make it the rest of the way." She stopped for a moment, looking out a viewport at the stars stretching before her. The Danik were still out there, waiting, plotting their next move. But humanity had proven that they would not be easily defeated. In the depths of space, the crew of the human supercarrier knew that their victory had not come without sacrifice. The galaxy had witnessed the might of humanity's strength and resilience, and that would resonate throughout the stars. The battle may have ended, but the war was far from over. Humanity's fight had only just begun. The future of the human supercarrier. The supercarrier drifted toward the human-controlled space station, the distant lights of the station growing larger on the horizon. The ship had been through hell and back, and the crew, though battered and weary, were resolute in their determination to prepare for whatever lay ahead. The battle with the Danik had proven just how fragile peace could be in a galaxy filled with unseen dangers. But one thing was certain: humanity was not going down without a fight. Captain Grant stood at the helm, her hands gripping the edge of her console. The crew had fought valiantly, and for the first time, the weight of the past battles felt like it was lifting. The station ahead was a place for rest, for recovery. But more than that, it was a place for the next step. They couldn't afford to sit back and relax. They had to be ready for the storm that was coming. "Prepare for docking," Captain Grant ordered, her voice unwavering. "We're going to need to refuel, repair, and regroup. We can't afford to be unprepared when the Danik, or anyone else, decides to test us again." The crew moved quickly, working in perfect unison to prepare the supercarrier for docking. Though the ship had taken heavy damage, the heart of it still beat with the same fire that had carried humanity through the darkest moments of the galaxy's history. This was more than just a battleship. It was a testament to what humanity could achieve when pushed to the edge. "Captain, we've received a message from the fleet," the communications officer said, his face grim. "They've confirmed that the Danik are regrouping. They're already planning their next move." Grant's jaw tightened. It was as she feared. The Danik would not let their defeat go unanswered. But they would be ready. Humanity had faced the impossible, and they had won. That victory had shown the galaxy that the human spirit was not something to be easily crushed. "We're not just fighting for survival," Grant said, her voice firm. We're fighting for the future of every species in this galaxy. If the Thanik are coming back, we need to be stronger. And we need to make sure they know that humanity will stand against them. As the Supercarrier docked at the station, the crew began their work to repair the ship. The damage from the battle was extensive, but nothing they couldn't fix. In the shipyard, engineers worked around the clock, replacing damaged panels, rerouting power systems, and reinforcing the shields. The weapons crew began recalibrating the pulse cannon and the vortex cannons, ensuring they would be ready for whatever the Thanik or anyone else might throw at them next. Captain Grant stood at the station's observation deck, gazing out at the stars. The universe was vast and unknown, filled with both threats and untapped potential. But humanity had proven something important. They were no longer insignificant. The galaxy had learned one thing that day. Their enemies might have the numbers, the strength, and the power of ancient civilizations, but they lacked the one thing humanity had in spades: the will to survive. "Captain," the chief strategist said as he approached, his voice low, "I've been reviewing the intel. The Thanik aren't just a threat. They're part of something bigger. This may be the beginning of something much larger." Grant turned to face him, her gaze unwavering. "Then we'll be ready. We'd fought too hard to come this far to let that stop us. Humanity's future is in our hands, and we're not letting it slip away." She turned back to the stars, her mind already racing with the possibilities. There would be more battles, more enemies, but the Supercarrier would be ready. The crew would be ready. And most importantly, humanity would be ready. As the Supercarrier repaired, refueled, and regrouped, the crew's spirits were lifted. They knew that their victory over the Thanik was just one chapter in a much larger story. The galaxy was a dangerous place, but humanity had proven it could fight against the darkness and win. And no matter what the future held, the Supercarrier and its crew would continue to stand tall. "Let them come," Captain Grant muttered, her voice filled with unshakable determination. "We'll be waiting." The video ends with the Supercarrier powering up once again, ready to face the challenges ahead. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Humanity wasn't just fighting for its survival, it was fighting for a place in the stars. And with the might of the Supercarrier behind them, they were ready for whatever came next.